Hi, my name is Josh Baldwin, and this is my diversity disability presentation timeline. So I'm going to start when I started in primary school in September of 2007. I started kindergarten at Eastside Elementary School in Sun Prairie, Wisconsin. It's a public school, and it was the first time that I was in a class with students with disabilities. Um, there were students in my class who had autism, ADHD, and a student that had MS. So these were integrated classrooms, and the children with disabilities were in the same class as me, of course. And at a young age, of course, I viewed kids with disabilities as equals, of course, and I was really too young to make any judgments or fully understand what was wrong with them. And at that time in my life, I really don't think I even knew that they had a disability until after the fact. In second grade, I became friends with a kid named Darren who had autism, and at this point in my life, I was better able to understand what disabilities were and what his disability was. Um, I often asked why he would flail his arms and make some awkward movements and sounds, but of course, at this age, I still didn't fully understand the complexity of his disability, so I would ask these questions, and it still never bothered me that he had a disability, and I was friends with him for a couple of years throughout primary school. And looking back at it, it never really mattered to me or any of my classmates for that matter. Then I also want to point out that my neighbor for a long time was in a wheelchair. His name was Chris. He served in the United States Army during the conflict with Afghanistan, and unfortunately he lost both of his legs in a helicopter crash. He retired from the Army after that, and he had been wheelchair bound pretty much pronounced for the rest of his life after that incident. But he really overcame this disability. Never prevented him from doing ordinary things. He was able to drive a car still. He would take the trash out, get the mail, things that, everyday people do. Growing up, I always thought it was amazing how, someone like him was able to make the most out of his life, given that he was in a difficult situation. He really had to overcome such a large obstacle in his life. And now he competes in wheelchair races and the Ironman and stuff like that. So he's really an inspirational person, and he's really made me realize that if he can do all these things without legs, then I certainly should be able to do extraordinary things as well. I started middle school September of 2014, and this is kind of the time in my life where I really began to understand disabilities that some of my peers had. Again, at public schools and integrated classrooms, I kind of realized that there were certain students that were different from me, and they made a diverse classroom, of course. Many of the students in my classes with disabilities were accompanied with an assistant. I had some experiences with students with autism acting out in class, causing disruptions. Occasionally they would pace around the room or talk back to the teacher, push desks over, things like that. This kind of did lead to a degree of a negative view of individuals with disabilities, specifically mental disabilities for that time in my life. And then there was a time where I had a classmate with autism and a behavioral disorder, so this event really stuck out to me. In 8th grade, I had a classmate, his name was Reese Gerbitz, and he had pretty severe autism, and he had a behavioral disorder as well, and he would act out in class, and he would yell inappropriate things, and at this point, I was still in middle school, still the immature middle schooler that many people were. I often thought it was funny. Obviously, at this point, I realized that it's not, and it was very disruptive. And unfortunately, he was eventually removed from the classroom and expelled from school. But he was placed in a different school that was better suited for him and for students like him, just because he was a student who was pretty, low functioning on the spectrum, and he really did need a lot of help in order for him to be successful. He did shape my views a little bit. I kind of thought of it as a negative thing just because it was annoying, and it did have an impact on me. So I started high school September of 2017, and at this point through my education, I really didn't have that much exposure to individuals with disabilities in my classes. And I kind of found this out because, I took many like upper level classes during high school, like AP class dual credit courses, and unfortunately many students with disabilities like, just weren't able to take those courses given disabilities that they had. And at this point in my school district, there was a secondary school called Prairie Phoenix Academy, where some students with disabilities would go to in order to receive their education. So they were kind of separated from me and the general population of students at that time. I started college here at UW Whitewater in September of 2020, studying business finance and playing tennis here. This coming here has really increased my exposure to individuals with both physical and mental disabilities. I saw this in residence halls and just around campus in general, and it really made me more aware of my surroundings and helped me realize that, me being able-bodied is really a privilege, and that people who do have disabilities, either mental or physical, do have a lot to overcome. But even though given that they do have a lot to overcome, they're still able to be extremely successful, and I think that is pointed out in many very different ways on this campus. I recently actually had an experience with the Whitewater wheelchair basketball team. I had the opportunity to play wheelchair basketball with them and learn a bit about their program through one of my classes. It was a really fun time. I had a great time playing with them. I realized that they are incredibly good at what they do, and I can totally see why they have won the 13 championships that they have. But it is extremely difficult, and trying it for the first time, of course, is difficult in itself, but being disabled, I'm sure, can only make it that much more difficult, and being able-bodied, I struggled to a great extent. So it was a great experience for me and really showed me that there are competitive sports for individuals with disabilities and how they have the opportunity to take part in them. So in the present, taking this course right now is really the first time I've, learned about disabilities and discussed them since early high school. Building an understanding of diversity and focusing on disabilities is something I think is really important, and I really increased my awareness from this class through that. So, and then to add another kind of element of diversity in here, in my high school and in my city of Sun Prairie, actually, there's a large population of Indian people, and I was friends with many of them in high school. So really throughout my, early education and through high school, I grew up with many people of this race and culture. Everyone that I met was a very intelligent individual, and they really influenced me to take on, rigorous academic courses, push myself in academics and stuff like that. They shared a lot of their culture with me. I recall going to various graduation parties with them, eating Indian food, which is really good, I will say, and attending some of their holidays as well. It really shaped how I view my own culture, and then it made me realize that there are more cultures than just my own. And it really helped me break out and see that there are lots of different cultures in the world, and there is a lot to learn about other people. So overall impact, I'd say in general, I really haven't been exposed to individuals with disabilities to a large extent. Of course, I point out many of the examples. I mean, none of my family members have disabilities, and not many of my friends do as well. Reflecting on this, I realize that I am very fortunate to be able-bodied and not have certain disabilities, but I also realize that individuals with disabilities face a lot of challenges, and many times they are able to overcome those challenges, and it really makes for a good life for them, and they really pride themselves in being able to overcome something that's happened in their life in order to make their lives better. I really judge individuals with disabilities because there have been times where I don't understand them. Their impacts and the concept of disabilities has had on me has been both positive and negative, I'd say, over my life. But individuals like this really have taught me a lot in the few times that I have been able to interact with them. So that's really the conclusion to my timeline. So thank you for listening.